So in a previous video, I talked about classic Sonic level design and talked about each of the games from that era, and it was pretty fun. Although I did get called out for being a LARPing fuck for not going over Sonic Forces, but I'm sorry, that was an intentional choice. I don't give a fuck.
But the truth is, you've never mattered all that much to me.
But anyways, that video did pretty alright, so I'm following up on my word and doing a video on the Adventure Era series, and oh my god, this is so much harder to talk about than the classic games. The classic games, while having different philosophies, all shared similarities, largely because they shared the same physics, meaning you can't really make these games, like, super different from each other at the end of the day. I mean, yeah, Sonic CD is way different from Sonic 3, but it's like, even they share similarities. You can't fully separate them, it's kind of in a weird boat. But the Adventure Era games, Jesus Christ. We have Shadow of 5 and Sonic Adventure 2 occupying the same space here. A domestic dispute is gonna break out any fucking second. The games in the list consist of Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Sonic 06. Dude. What we'll soon learn is that these games are all very different from one another, which makes talking about them kinda hard. Again, these games are all so different from one another on a fundamental level, it's so strange. But anyways, there's no place to start than the start. Sonic Adventure 1. Sonic Adventure 1 needs a little bit of context, I feel, before we dive into it, because it's coming off of the heels of 4 entire games with a set-in-stone foundation. The classic games acted, essentially, as platformers that used pinball at the very base of its game design. Sonic gained speed not just by a natural acceleration or by a run button, it was by gaining speed via the terrain. Descending slopes would speed him up, he could curl into a ball and roll on walls, ceilings. It was the physics of a pinball adapted into a platformer, and it led to really in-depth gameplay. The levels were made around Sonic's physics, and because of this, classic Sonic games stood out and still stand out as some of the most unique platformers of all time because of their gameplay. Sonic wasn't just another platformer, it had its own shtick going that made it unmistakable. Flash forward to 1999, Sonic Adventure released, and it did not retain the physics-oriented gameplay seen in the classics. Now listen, Sonic Adventure is a good game. To most people, not me. Sonic Adventure attempts to replicate the feeling of classic Sonic without actually retaining a lot of the gameplay identity found in it. Now, right off the bat, I'm just gonna say, this likely wasn't a super intentional choice, I'd like to think, being more so a result of the hardware at the time not really being able to handle pinball physics in a 3D environment. It was the early days of 3D, I can imagine how difficult that would be to figure out. Now, the absence of physics-based platforming sucks, right? Yes, but that doesn't mean that the game by default is bad because of that. I mean, it lost its gameplay identity, what a shame, but you can still have a good platformer without physics-based platforming. This can be seen via, the platforming genre. So how good of a job does Sonic Adventure do at being a platformer? You know my answer, next slide. This game's level design. Oh boy! So, I thought I'd mention before people rip out my cloaca that this game does have rolling physics. When you roll down a hill, you do in fact go faster. The problem is, this game without rolling physics would be the exact same because they don't do anything with it. This game's level design is a Far Cry 3 from the classics in pretty much every way. In the classics, the level design usually had multi-tiered level design with higher paths rewarding skilled players, yada yada. This game forgoes that for most of its runtime, leaving you with a very linear set of levels. Now, if we want to lie in the case of a Sonic game, we can say that linearity doesn't matter that much if the linear levels are good and engaging. The problem is, they aren't. Nostalgia goggles off. Emerald Coast is 2 minutes of white noise, only made interesting by a very basic skip at the start and unintentional skips to skip chunks of the level. It's largely just a straight shot with barely any platforming to begin with. On a high-level run of the stage, you still barely have to jump. But even if we ignore Emerald Coast, Windy Hill follows the exact same problems. It's a hold-forward Sonic Forces simulator with a non-existent skill ceiling and Forces tier level design. You guys will kill me for that, but the only reason you disagree is because Sonic Adventure controls better than Forces. Looking at the actual level design, it is Forces tier. Now, the main problem this game has is horrible, unengaging platforming, which is true. This level design is rarely challenging or interesting or engaging. And the few times the game really does give you a good chunk of platforming, it's all the most basic shit ever. Every one of these stages feels the exact same, and it's not helped especially because of the spin dash jump, an easy tech that lets you skip over a lot of level design without any effort. So now, the little bit of platforming there was is completely avoidable. Now, I won't say there aren't any good stages. Red Mountain, despite sharing the same problems as the other stages, feels like an actual platforming stage because it's the place where the spin dash jump feels the most natural. It feels like actual platforming. Too bad it's also fucking basic as shit. So what is Sonic Adventure level design? The classics were so easily definable, but in comparison, there's nothing Sonic Adventure does that other platformers don't besides speed and spectacle, I guess. But the levels don't really do anything with that speed, so, you know, Sonic Adventure level design is just basic platforming level design. Now, before we continue, you know what I'm gonna say. I don't even have to say it. Don't act dumb, you know what I'm gonna say. So do it. Also, join my Patreon for early access to videos. It's as low as $2.50, and I'd be very happy if you did it. Sonic Adventure 2! Off the bat, this game also does not try to adapt the classics. No Sonic game has tried to adapt this, so oh well, that kinda really fucking sucks. Now obviously, despite this does not mean good 3D Sonic games don't exist, because most of them, at the very least, are pretty alright. And Sonic Adventure 2 is no exception. While I don't love this game, I respect it a ton because it has such a strong vision, and it executes said vision extremely well. Unlike Sonic Adventure 1, this game knows what it wants to be and commits to it all the way. This game is entirely based on a score attack philosophy. What does this mean? While speedrunning it is very fun still, most of your enjoyment and obtaining A ranks relies solely on racking up as much score as possible. This game is still very linear, even more so than Adventure 1, but despite this, it does a lot more with its linearity. Instead of each platforming challenge being tackled the exact same way for the most part, this game focuses on chaining together little bits and pieces of level to rack up a bigger action chain. This often comes down to executing really tightly designed sections perfectly. In Cityscape, you're presented with several ramps you need to jump off of at just the right moment to get sent high up. This gives you score. Hitting these ramps on foot in quick succession perfectly, that gives you score. This is gonna sound like a complaint, which it kind of is, but more so an honest observation. Most of SA2's attack chains that explicitly give you the score you need for an A rank are usually arbitrary sets of objects or bits of level where you need to execute a certain thing just right. What would normally be just a normal, boring homing chain becomes suddenly something necessary to A rank the stage. That's a big reason I don't love SA2 a ton. The levels themselves often contain plenty of uninteresting pieces of level design that are made important by the game's score attack philosophy. A ranking these stages and perfecting them in a score attack manner feels a little boring because most of the time there's an objectively best route present in the stages that reward the most score, and the game usually spells it out for you. Now, optimizing these routes can absolutely be fun. However, for me, I don't get a ton of enjoyment out of this as most of the level design just isn't really my cup of tea. Personally, it's not what I'm looking for in a Sonic game. Despite my personal gripes, though, I can look back and say that me not liking this game comes down a lot to just it not being my thing. Because it's easy for me to look at this game's level design and see that they absolutely accomplished what they wanted to. These levels are anything but aimless. They have a clear and concise vision that was seen out through the very end. This game aims to do something very different with its levels, and it does that something quite well. I'm just not a fan of that something. And that's fine. Good game, 902 out of 10. Oh, but also on a final note, Final Rush is like one of my favorite stages of all time, so that's something. Next up, we have Sonic Project Heroes. Oh, silly me. That's not what that game is called. How foolish of me. What it's actually called is Sonic Adventure 3!
Right, that's it! Yes, here we go. Level up! Alright, let's go!
We're one step away.
So Sonic Heroes is actually quite different from both Sonic Adventure games. Both 1 and 2 felt pretty similar games at their core, however Sonic Cheerios really goes in a pretty different direction, and by god, despite not adapting the classics and their pinball physics, the level design is probably the closest to the classics we've gotten so far. Now, when I say this, I'm not saying they got super close or anything, but they got closer than most 3D titles. This really comes down to the multi-tiered level design making its return, and goddamn, I think it's executed pretty well. Sonic Heroes carries the score attack philosophy for sure, but it's de-emphasized a good bit, making for a more fun game to actually speedrun in my opinion. Now this game's level design is built off the core mechanic of the game, this being the team switching. Now let me tell you, from personal experience, this mechanic was pretty hard to grasp. The game would tell me, hey fat ass, break a rock with Knuckles, and then I'd fail to switch in time and awkwardly smack into the rock for a second. It's just shit. Now this is less praise to the level design itself and more so the mechanic, but by god, once the switching became muscle memory, switching in time of everything gives the game such a good flow. I just thought I'd point that out. Now onto the level design itself, and yeah, I think this is pretty solid for the most part. High level play often consists of utilizing the team mechanic well by switching at the right time and using each character's unique skill set to reach this long fucking sentence, different parts of the level. For example, before a drop down to the bottom path, switch to Tails and fly forward, ending up on some floating platforms acting as the top path. Stuff like that, and I think it's really fun. Something this game does a lot more than the others is starting you off on the top path of certain sections and having the challenge be staying on it. I think this is a really good approach as the team gimmick can be a bit hard to grasp for a lot of players, and making the challenge more so about showing you directly, hey, if you do some basic platforming Tails, you won't fall down like a dumbass. I like it. Now, despite me liking this game's level design, it certainly has a few glaring flaws, namely 3. First off, combat. The combat of this game isn't the worst, and most of the time you can either make quick work of certain sections with skill or avoid them altogether, and hey, both of these options are decent fun, I'll say that. However, the problem comes with mandatory combat, and yeah, a lot of this can be kind of annoying, especially for the pace. And also, the combat is very rinse and repeat. Most combat encounters feel the exact same. And this leads into issue number 2. The level design itself can be a bit rinse and repeat. Oftentimes in these levels, a lot of level design will be reused throughout the stage and can get kind of boring when you feel like you're going through the motions in certain bits. It can get pretty repetitive. I personally don't mind it that much. It's not like it's horrible or anything, but it's definitely a problem still. I find it a bit weird for this game specifically due to how long the levels are compared to the average Sonic level length. I feel like you could cut out every repeated level bit and you'd still have a really solid level length. The longer level length isn't a bad thing to me personally, but it feels kind of weird, especially when the game goes out of its way to seemingly arbitrarily extend its time with the repeated sections. And number 3. I forgot number 3. On a final note for Sonic Footnotes, I want to point out the pace of the levels. This game focuses more on methodical platforming. The game is honestly a little slow, but when playing it, it doesn't really feel slow, as what I'm doing in these stages keeps me constantly engaged, and I'm always inputting a lot of, well, inputs. The perfect word for Sonic Heroes levels are, I couldn't think of any more funny words that sound like heroes. The perfect word for Heroes levels is, well, methodical. It's not this super fast game, and that's fine. Its levels accommodate this sort of playstyle, and I think it works really well. Shadow the Hedgehog? You're the only one who is nearly as fun as me. Buddy, you think you look fun? You focus on gunplay. You're just a cheap fucking knockoff. So Shadow of 5 is in a weird boat because it's not really similar to, like, any other game. It builds off of Heroes' general controls, and its level design is probably the most similar to it by proxy, but it really is unique. That's not a good thing. These levels are very linear and focus little on platforming, with most instances of it being very uninteresting and basic. These levels are built around a mission structure and gunplay. Instead of engaging level design, most of the heavy lifting is done by plentiful enemy placement, which grabs most of your attention. And the missions aren't like anything cool either. It really just boils down to find the 12 gluings throughout the stage, or kill the guy on this piece of paper, his name's Mac and he owes me money. Because of all this, I don't really have anything much to say about the level design here. It's not great. It's also not good. But finally, we end on Son the Hog. Oh, silly me. That's not the name of the game. It's actually Sonic Adventure 4! Now, Sonic 06 is kind of neat because Sonic doesn't just have these levels to himself. No, newcomer Silver the Hedgehog also has his own play styles with completely unique level design. I will not be talking about Silver the Hedgehog because, well, I haven't played him yet, and I also don't want to talk about him. So we're gonna be talking exclusively about Sonic. And sorry to end the video off on sort of a wet fart, but I don't really have all that much to actually say about Sonic's gameplay. This is partly because I haven't replayed 06 a ton, but it's also partly just because there's not a ton to say about it. 06 almost acts as this weird culmination of past adventure games as it shares aspects from each. It seems to primarily have a score attack based design like SA2, except while a bit linear, is way more open than the rest of the era. Its platforming is a bit simpler and traditional like SA1, although a bit more interesting, and it has this sort of methodical feeling to its levels, like Heroes being the slowest out of all the adventure games, and I think it's pretty nice. While you can shit on 06 all you want, the actual level design present is not bad at all, honestly. Sure, it has some sections or levels where things are pretty whatever. White Acropolis specifically is just kind of mind-numbing to me. For the most part, this game's levels are very well put together. While the game itself was clearly rushed, I get the impression that these levels were anything but. They feel pretty damn complete. They've got some good length to them, they feel fleshed out. The only thing I don't like about them is what I criticized Heroes for, the combat. Yeah, it's not that good, especially in Retail 06 where you have to work with this fucking pathetic pocket pussy of a homing attack that takes a full business day to use. However, like Heroes, most combat can be avoided, and something that it has over Heroes is that there aren't any annoying enemies that are a chore to take out. You kind of just spam the homing attack and bounce and they go down without any challenge. But yeah, 06 has pretty good level design, I like it. Well, that about wraps it up. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said in the last video, if this video does well, I'll make another video covering over the final era, the boost era of games. Except wait, I actually won't. You see, when getting to this part of the video, I realized that I made a video covering each boost game and their level design on complete accident. Yeah, this video I made pretty recently is genuinely just what the video would look like. There isn't really anything I'd change either, as I genuinely go over exactly what I would for a video dedicated to boost level design, so, cool. There's a full series for you guys. I'll probably package it into a little playlist, maybe like a little compilation video for your viewing pleasure, and then that'll be that. It'll also make for a fully complete little series as a... Never finished the other one. While I'm at it, I might as well mention it, even though literally nobody cares. I was a good way into a series talking about the remakes of other Sonic games, mainly made by Dimps. I covered Unleashed, Generations 3DS, and Colors DS. The Colors DS video kind of flopped, and while it did suck, that wasn't my primary reason for stopping the series altogether. All that was left after that was the Master System games, which I'd cover in a single video, and Lost World 3DS. I was in a weird boat because I knew a Master System remake video would do ass, and I straight up just don't want to play Lost World 3DS. So that series is dead and buried, rest in peace. But anyways, if you did enjoy, be sure to like and subscribe. I've got a Patreon where you can get early access to videos if you want to go the extra mile, so do that if you can. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.